And for the second time today, guys, welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, we got some breaking news. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I did a video about an hour or so ago looking at if the Toronto Maple Leafs should bench or play specific players, looking at the pros and cons. Not so much an opinion video, but just some perspective with some opinion towards the very end. There's no controversy here. Jack Campbell is 17-2-2 with a .923 save percentage. He's starting game one, round one. Doesn't matter if Frederik Andersen posts a 40 save shutout in this game. If you're a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, you cheer for the players that are on that team. Anything else is a personal agenda. And if I got to be honest with you, David Rittich doesn't really inspire much confidence either. He's either really good or really, really bad. So if Frederik Andersen can give us a solid effort tomorrow night and give us a little bit more confidence behind Jack Campbell, I don't see how that's a bad thing. But now, on to how this is even possible. Because guys like Zach Hyman and Riley Nash are in regular white and regular blue. Alex Galchenyuk in Taxi Squad gray. There were some interesting lines at today's practice. I guess I can flash them on the screen. But the main point is that Riley Nash and Zach Hyman look to make their return quite soon. This is suggesting that if it's not tomorrow, it's definitely going to be in the last game of the season against the Winnipeg Jets. What I'm trying to get at is that it doesn't sound like Nash and Hyman are going to be sitting on LTIR for the last remaining 2 games of the season. And if that's the case, how are they able to afford to have all 3, Nash, Hyman, and Frederik Andersen, in the lineup at the same time? Ignore the lines completely here, but with Riley Nash, Zach Bogosian, Scott Sabourin, and Zach Hyman all on LTIR, the Maple Leafs can spend up to $88.2 million on their roster, including those guys. And this type of roster with Frederik Andersen activated and on it has an $87.5 million cap hit. So this is cap compliant. Zach Hyman currently isn't on LTIR, but in this scenario, in order to afford it, I'm showing him on it, and he would be placed on it retroactive to the 10th last game of the season because he didn't play in that. It's a really, really niche rule, but placing him retroactively to that date would still make him eligible to come back and play in the playoffs. But if Hyman and Nash and Andersen, all 3 of them, are not on LTIR, whether Andersen is starting or not, we need to deduct Hyman's and Nash's cap hits from this total here. Because that $88.2 million was including their salaries on LTIR, but they're no longer on LTIR, so they don't get that relief. They can't spend over the cap by that much. So in order to afford all 3 of them on the active roster, they would need to fit all of these players right now that are on the screen under this number. Because when you place a player on LTIR, you're not deducting, you're adding to your cap ceiling the amount of money that you can spend over the cap to replace those players. They still count. But when you activate players off of LTIR, your LTIR pool, the amount of money that you can spend over the cap, shrinks. And that's just because those players are no longer injured. No one right now on the screen is eligible for waivers. And you're about $4 million over this number. So the only way that the Maple Leafs are able to afford to have all 3, Nash, Hyman, and Andersen, on the active roster, or even 2 out of 3 of those guys, is because the next 2 games that they have are taking place outside of the original 116-day window that the season was supposed to take place in. So the regular season was originally set to end on May the 8th. So if you take a guy like John Tavares, who makes $11 million, from the start of the season, January 13th, until May the 8th, there's 116 days. So you take his $11 million and you divide it by 116 days, and that is how much money he makes every single day during the regular season. The problem with these 2 games is that they're taking place after all of this money has already been paid out. So the NHL had already said that they were going to impose strict call-up restrictions after May the 8th, but activating someone who was making NHL money all season long on LTIR is not calling them up. Frederik Andersen, Zach Hyman, Riley Nash were always making an NHL paycheck. And it's really important to pay close attention to the wording there. Impose strict call-up restrictions. So if you had a guy that was in the minors, on May 7th, and you called them up to play a game on the 12th and the 14th, you have to pay them. Regular NHL players that were already on the roster for the 7th and the 8th, like I said, they've already been paid all of their money. But you have to pay guys for regular season games. In the playoffs, that's something else. That's the CBA. It's whatever the CBA and the players in the league negotiated for how much money the players make from playoff revenue. But that money doesn't count towards the 116-day salary cap. So that's why they had to send a guy like Rasmus Sandin down. Probably in order to adhere to the stricter roster restrictions that are going to be put in place for these two games. And the reason why they might be able to activate all three of them and operate outside of the salary cap or completely sidestep it without it meaning anything is because all three of those guys were getting paid their NHL paychecks continuously. I think that my explanation makes sense. I hope it does. If it doesn't, I'll try to be as active as I possibly can in the comment section for this video. The TLDR, the too long did not read, is that the salary cap does not exist outside of this May 8th date because that is beyond the original 116-day window. Activating those players off of LTIR who were always making an NHL paycheck doesn't affect anything. But if you were to call someone up who doesn't need to pass through waivers after this May 8th date, like Rasmus Sandin, you still need to pay those players because these are regular season games. Or Riley Nash and Zach Hyman aren't going to see action in those two games, and they will see action game 1, round 1 of the playoffs. But I don't think that that's the case with how active they've been in practice. This is a gray area where there is nothing really written down that I can tell you 100% for sure. We're just going to have to wait for confirmation. And really quickly, I want to give a shout out to the Chicken Tenders podcast. These guys had me on the other day. We talked for almost about an hour or so. Danny, Zach, Brayden, thank you again for having me on. If you're watching this right now, go ahead, subscribe to these guys. Watch the 2 parts, I think, that I'm going to be on with these guys. They talked to Matt Stajan, a Leaf legend, about a week or so ago. Just awesome guys who love hockey and are awesome to just vibe with and chill with and talk with. I had a lot of fun talking to them. So their link will be in the video description. So like I said, I'm going to try to be as active as I possibly can in the comment section of this video. And let's try to be as open-minded as we possibly can going into tomorrow's game with Frederik Andersen starting. You can have an opinion and you cannot be optimistic, but let's try to be open-minded to the idea, because if he plays well, it's never a bad thing. So make sure to like the video if you did like and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, go check out the video from earlier. And also, I hope you all are doing well. Take care.